Good morning. Welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We're delighted to have you here, both those in this space and those attending virtually. It's good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Annie Vale. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm a member of our board of directors. If you have a request for today's meditation, please place it in the bowl or in the chat box before the opening hymn. If you're joining us for the first time, please fill out a guest card. You can find a link in the chat box or the yellow printed card at the Welcome Center. We're glad you're here. After the service, we host a social hour, both on Zoom and in the social hall. In the social hall, you'll have multiple options. Our usual 20-minute small group conversations will still be happening at the two tables in the social hall and in the courtyard. Feel free to find a group and chat. Otherwise, there are 4 centers set up in the social hall for folks of all ages. We have a center for art, soul work, story, and ritual practice. Head there if you want to engage the prompts to create and play and chat with the children, youth, and adults gathered at the 4 different centers. As always, we'll have cyber social hour starting at 11. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. I'm Reverend Sarah Goodman. I use she, her pronouns, and you are very welcome.
During the summers, I work as a lifeguard at a beach at a YMCA day camp. My job typically consists of telling kids to stop throwing rocks at each other. But one Friday, my boss wanted me to take on more responsibility as the canoe lead. On my first day as canoe lead, I was supposed to be assisted by the typical canoe lead, but they had other things to attend to that day. Putting a 17-year-old in charge of 4 counselors and 25 kids, what could possibly go wrong? My first 2 groups of the day went totally fine. After lunch, I had to take out another group of campers. Everything was fine to begin with. However, soon the winds began to pick up, and the kids, who were around 6 to 7 in age, could not control the canoes. As a swimmer and a lifeguard, I am highly accustomed to water, but this was one of the only times where I was genuinely afraid of it. The wind got so bad that we ended up across the lake, about 1 mile from the camp, near the backyards of large private homes along the lake. By then, almost half of the kids were crying. There was no way that the kids were going to be able to make it back to camp across the lake. To put it simply, I was traumatized. I was afraid of what would have happened if the waves were rougher, what would have happened if the campers had fallen in, and what I would do if one of the campers had drowned. I spent the weekend working through my thoughts and feelings around the canoeing incident. When I returned to canoe lead that Monday, I returned with a new perspective on what my role was to the campers, a new perspective on what my role was in nature and water, and a new respect for it. Today we light the chalice for new perspectives.
Please join me in the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is our law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening hymn is number 1010 in the teal softcover hymnal, We Give Thanks. Please rise and body your spirit.
I'm Assistant DRE Nico Van Ostrand, and my pronouns are they, them. This is a part of the service where we share a story with you all. And one of the reasons we share stories is because we recognize that something shifts inside between the start of the story and its ending. Storytelling takes us on a journey into the narrative, and when we come back out again into normal time and space, often we have a brand new thought or feeling to carry with us. Story is not the only thing at church that does this. Something we frequently use in religious education is a labyrinth, which is a twisty, spirally path that you can walk or trace with your finger. It looks kind of like a maze, except there are no wrong turns. You simply make your way into the center, then turn and follow the path back out again. So instead of a story today, we're going to do a labyrinth practice. And I hope you will join us in the social hall after service, where we'll have a floor labyrinth and some other labyrinth centers set up for you to explore. So take a moment to notice where you're at right now. Notice your physical location, what it looks like and sounds like, what it feels like. Notice your emotional location. How are you feeling right now? And where in your body are you holding that feeling? So, mindful of where you are, both physically and emotionally, I invite you to participate in this practice in one of two ways. The first option is to stay wherever you are and trace something with your finger. Perhaps you'll trace your own hand, or trace a shape on your leg or on your chair. Maybe you'll trace the rectangle of a hymnal. The second option is to physically move around your space. You might travel the edge of your room or wander up and down the aisles of the sanctuary. And whichever of those options you choose, I hope you'll do so with intention and breathing deeply. So please begin that practice now, and I'll call us back in a few moments. It's time to exit your labyrinth. Finish tracing or return to the place that you started from. And as you settle back into your seat, take a moment to notice your surroundings again. Notice what's going on inside as well. I invite you to hold on to that noticing and to keep noticing. When you experience something, be it a story, a labyrinth, a worship service, an RE class, that leaves you feeling changed. And with that invitation in mind, it is now time to sing together as the registered children and the youth counselors head to the social hall for summer RE programming. So please rise and body your spirit for number 1057 in the teal paperback hymnal, Go Lift It Up.
Let's pause for a moment of meditation and prayer. Gathered as we are together here, about 70 people in this room and 62 households online, we are stronger together. Sometimes it feels hard to name out loud what we need and what we hope for. But in this space and in this moment, that hardness can soften. We all come with a combination of joys and sorrows, needs and celebrations. This time is like every other time, full of complexity and ambiguity. Whatever it is that we're struggling with today, maybe find support. Whatever it is that we are grieving today, maybe find a sense of reprieve. Whatever it is that we are celebrating today, may we find co-creators and companions for that celebration. Today, our community is holding much. One person who is praying for quick results and news after mom referred to oncology. Judy prays, may two friends pass easily from the bonds of earth. Maggie Madden's friend Trinity, may she find peace and healing, and her Aunt Peggy, grace and health. We recognize the birthday of Alice Olson's late husband Barney. And our community is also holding the family of Reverend Rob Eller Isaacs. After an aggressive diagnosis of pancreatic cancer in March, Rob passed away yesterday morning, surrounded by kids and grandkids. May his memory be for a blessing. His family shared these words from Raymond Carver. Late fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life, even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on this earth. We hold them all and all who knew them in our hearts and prayers. And if you are holding the names of people in your life who need prayer or support, Feel free to name them out loud into this space. May it be so, and amen.
The recipient of today's special collection will be the organization called Every Meal. Your donation will help feed Minnesota children until school and school meals resume in September. Through a partner network, Every Meal gets food to children who live with food insecurity, kids who don't always know when they'll get their next meal. Also this summer, Every Meal will accept extra bounty from your gardens to help feed local families. Visit the Every Meal website to learn more. We will pass the donation plates now. You can also donate in 3 other ways. On the WBUUC webpage, send a check or leave a check in the locked box outside the front office, or use the text to give option printed in your order of service if you're here in the room, or in the chat box if you are attending virtually. Whichever way you give, please indicate the keyword meal. Thank you for your generosity in serving our world together.
Our reading today is a long and meandering, beautiful poem, so come with me on a stroll. Things I Didn't Know I Loved by the Turkish poet Nazım Hikmet, toward the end of his life when he'd just been released from prison and was luxuriating in all the everyday things that seemed new again, or as we'd say nowadays, practicing gratitude. It's 1962, March 28th. I'm sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train. Night is falling. I never knew I liked night descending like a tired bird on a smoky, wet plain. I don't like comparing nightfall to a tired bird. I didn't know I loved the earth. Can someone who hasn't worked the earth love it? I've never worked the earth. It must be my only platonic love. And here I've loved rivers all this time, whether motionless like this, they curl skirting the hills, European hills crowned with chateaus, or whether stretched out flat as far as the eye can see. I know you can't wash in the same river even once. I know the river will bring new lights you'll never see. I know we live slightly longer than a horse, but not nearly as long as a crow. I know this has troubled people before and will trouble those after me. I know all this has been said 1,000 times before and will be said after me. I didn't know I loved the sky, cloudy or clear. I didn't know I loved trees. I never knew I loved roads, even the asphalt kind. Vera's behind the wheel, we're driving from Moscow to the Crimea. The two of us inside a closed box. The world flows past on both sides, distant and mute. I was never so close to anyone in my life, and I can't contain myself for joy. Flowers come to mind for some reason, poppies, cactuses, jonquils. In the jonquil garden in Kadıköy, Istanbul, I missed Marika. Fresh almonds on her breath. I was 17. My heart on a swing touched the sky. I didn't know I loved flowers. Friends sent me 3 red carnations in prison. I just remember the stars. I love them too. Whether I'm floored watching them from below or whether I'm flying at their side. I have some questions for the cosmonauts. Were the stars much bigger? Did they look like huge jewels on black velvet or apricots on orange? Did you feel proud to get closer to the stars? I saw color photos of the cosmos. Well, some of them looked just like such paintings, which is to say they were terribly figurative and concrete. My heart was in my mouth looking at them. They are our endless desire to grasp things. Seeing them, I could not even think of death and not feel at all sad. I never knew I loved the cosmos. Snow flashes in front of my eyes, both heavy, wet, steady snow and the dry, whirling kind. I didn't know I liked snow. I never knew I loved the sun, even when setting cherry red, as now. In Istanbul, too, it sometimes sets in postcard colors. But you aren't about to paint it that way. I didn't know I loved the sea, except the Sea of Azov, or how much I didn't know I loved clouds, whether I'm under or up above them, whether they look like giants or shaggy white beasts. Moonlight, the falsest, the most languid, the most petit bourgeois, strikes me. I like it. I didn't know I liked rain, whether it falls like a fine net or splatters against the glass. My heart leaves me tangled up in a net or trapped inside a drop and takes off for uncharted countries I didn't even know I loved. Rain. But why did I suddenly discover all these passions sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train? Is it because I lit my 6th cigarette? One alone could kill me. Is it because I'm half dead from thinking about someone back in Moscow her hair straw blonde, eyelashes blue. The train plunges on through the pitch black night. I never knew I liked the night, pitch black. Sparks fly from the engine. I didn't know I loved sparks. I didn't know I loved so many things and had to wait until 60 to find it out, sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train, watching the world disappear as if on a journey of no return.
Need a minute after that music. Thank you. Last month, I went on vacation to San Diego with my family. Correction, I went on a trip with my family. There's not much restful about traveling with small children. In any case, the family and I went to San Diego, a well-known tourist destination, but for Sean and I, it was going home. We, both of us, grew up in San Diego and still have most of our family there. We haven't lived there in 12 years, and we haven't been there in 4, and yet when I got behind the wheel of a borrowed car, I knew exactly how to navigate myself anywhere I wanted to go. In the car, I felt like I could pick up exactly where I left off. But here's the thing about 12 years passing in one of the most expensive cities in the US, most of the friends that I've had, that I love, that I miss from there, don't live there anymore. They moved to find affordable housing. They moved to follow their calling. They moved to follow their loved ones. In some ways, I could pick up where I left off, but in others, probably the most important ways, it isn't possible to go home again. So I put my feet in the ocean, or the sea as my 6-year-old insisted on calling it, and ate at some of my favorite restaurants, spent time with my family, but I wasn't home anymore, not really. This has me wondering, how long must one be gone from a place before it stops being home? How long does it take for a new place to be home? Sometimes you choose to be in a transitional time, moving for the job, for love, or because you've always wanted to. And sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes violence erupts near your home and you're displaced. Sometimes natural disasters destroy your home and you can't afford to rebuild. Many people have to go to refugee camps or travel on foot 1,000 miles for a better life. Families from Ukraine, Central America, Syria, places all over the world. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced from homes because of violence. They live in between. In the dark, scary uncertainty of the in-between, they have barely the illusion of safety and only a glimmer of hope that at some point in the future they might find stability. And yet, refugees from a dozen different wars have made refugee camps their long-term homes. They live in between, but they make stability out of the unstable. They are in refugee camps in Kenya that have been active for more than 20 years, becoming more or less cities in their own right. There are grandchildren of the original refugees living in these camps. They have their own graveyards. They have their own schools. They've learned the lesson that we try to forget when we set down our roots. Life is uncertain. And home is not a place, it's a feeling. Sure, there are times when things seem to be steady and whole and we find a temporary happiness in the steadiness of it all, but life changes in a moment. Natural disasters teach us this. Sudden illnesses remind us of this. A global pandemic that's disrupted our lives for more than 2.5 years has taught us this. Home is something important, but hard to capture in words. In contrast, some folks say that you cannot truly appreciate home, you cannot fully appreciate what makes your life interesting until you experience it with fresh perspective. So I began the idea of this sermon thinking I would share with you the idea of going away, gathering new ideas, finding new things, getting new attitudes, and bringing home that new, fresh perspective. But that's not the whole picture. The going away is what makes home alive again, teaching us to appreciate the everyday once more. No more does the everyday seem mundane. It becomes new again. We see it with different eyes. We experience it with different feelings. We turn around and it's not what it was. And that is what makes it wonderful. As Owen said in his chalice lighting, having a harrowing experience, something new that expanded his understanding, made his role in the world a little clearer and gave him a fresh perspective when he returned. But having new experiences is just one of the ways you can gain a fresh perspective. The poet from the reading Jack shared certainly has a fresh perspective on the world after returning to it, after getting released from prison. He has a litany of things he didn't know that he loved, like trees and rain and roads, things he didn't experience the same way when he was incarcerated. His memories are clearly mixed up with his current experiences, and as he shifts from the present to the past, from phrase to phrase, he ends with, "I didn't know I loved so many things, and I had to wait until 60 to find out, sitting by the window of the Prague-Berlin train, watching the world disappear as if on a journey of no return." Recently, several poems by formerly incarcerated people have come into my life. A poetry magazine that I like has an issue that's solely focused on it. And Rebecca Solnit posted the one that Jack read on her page. It occurs to me that it's a unique perspective on this theme of going and coming home, going basically to nowhere and coming back to something familiar but confounding. From what I understand, being incarcerated is being set apart in time, in a liminal transition space, but living in prison for any length of time, it becomes the normal. It becomes the home. It becomes the culture that you live in. So in that case, instead of going for a time to learn something and returning with new insight, getting released from prison is actually more like returning from living in another country. You have to relearn the customs and cultural norms of home. The pop culture has jumped ahead without you. Technology and language have advanced in new and confounding ways. People you care about have moved away or died. It's a different world. Now, how is this like moving your whole life to a different part of the world and returning to the place you grew up? Well, people change, the buildings change, and while you're gone, you're living in a world that's out of sync with the one you've left behind. And now you have to find a way to sync up again. You return with fresh eyes, with a new perspective. Have you gone away and come back recently? What fresh perspective were you able to bring? Another opportunity to gain new perspective is to see something through the eyes, the experience of someone who is new to it. This is why so many movies and TV series introduce themselves with someone who's just starting out. The new character needs to have everything explained to them so that the show can explain everything to us. I saw this kind of when Roger started here too. I saw everything with new eyes as I explained to him how the building worked, as I shared with him about the committees and groups that make up this community. I began to understand you all again in a new way. Like when I took my family to San Diego, my kids had never been there before. And I got to share with them some of my favorite places. I got to experience playing in the ocean with them for the first time. I held them while big salty waves knocked into us, and they laughed and shrieked with joy. I had taken for granted my love of the ocean. Things I know about the ocean that I had forgotten, like how you get tangled in seaweed, and how there are so many seashells you can't help crushing them underfoot, and it kind of hurts. And how there are seagulls who just want to steal your lunch, and sometimes they try and do it right out of your hand. I saw that all with fresh eyes again. And now that I've returned to Minnesota, I have seen the gorgeous green foliage that the drought-ridden San Diego would never have. And I feel the steamy air on my skin in the way that the desert climate of San Diego rarely experiences. I am home again now. This new home. And I will take it for granted again, but for now, I am grateful to be home. I invite you now to join me in the closing hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth, number 21 in the hardback gray hymnal. Let's rise in body or spirit to sing together. In this day, may you all find home, home in your hearts, home in your families, home in this place. Go in peace.